Christopher Nolan is a director who pretty much everyone is aware of, and whether or not you know him by name, chances are you've seen at least one of his films. Now, he's one of the most influential directors of all time, with some even calling him the greatest modern filmmaker, and even those who think that's a bit of a bold statement will admit that Nolan has created some very impressive cinematic pieces. So where did he get his footing? Well, before he was making the now famous Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan was making some earlier films that were establishing his style, and I'm here to look at those movies today, starting with his very first feature-length film, Following. Following is the 1998 film directed by Christopher Nolan and was all shot on 16mm film. And I say this because it's something I admire about Christopher Nolan. Ever since this movie, he has shot all of his films on film, which is something rare found in cinema these days, but it's definitely something to admire. The film follows our main character, who is a seclusive, lonely man living in London and happens to have a very strange hobby, following people, hence the title of the film. And yes, it is creepy and a bit stalkerish, however our main character technically isn't doing any harm. That is until he finds a new target to follow who just happens to be a burglar. He continues to follow the thief and ends up going on heists with him. And this is where the events of the movie really begin to unfold, giving us our first taste of Nolan's now trademarked plot twists. Even in his earlier days, Christopher Nolan was creating some very complex stories, and it's cool to see that he's stayed true to that throughout his career. Following is a very enjoyable film to and from the beginning, and it's a great addition to Christopher Nolan's long-running history. Up next is Memento. So as great as Following was, it really wasn't until Memento that Christopher Nolan was really put on the map, while also establishing his now famous style of crafting a movie. So Memento is a film with a non-linear narrative, and if you're unfamiliar with the concept, basically what it means is that the events of the movie are told out of order. Films like Citizen Kane, Annie Hall, or even Pulp Fiction are very famous for doing this, and for good reason too. It's a risky way to make a movie, but when it's done right, it's done right, and it can be very effective in telling a story. So Memento is about a man named Leonard Shelby who is going to track down his wife's killer. Yes, that's right folks, this is a revenge story. However, there is a twist. Leonard is a character who has a sort of short-term memory loss disease, and he remembers his wife's demise, but anything after that is a complete blur. To cope with this, Leonard takes pictures, writes notes, and even puts tattoos on his body if it's important enough. So as the movie progresses and you learn a bit more about what's going on behind the scenes, suspense begins to rise. And without giving anything away, I will say this is a very hard movie to predict, making it all the more enjoyable. So if you like films that keep you guessing the whole entire time, this is definitely a film for you because it's one of the best in that genre. So the final film I'll be talking about here today is the 2002 mystery thriller, Insomnia. So this is a very different film than Christopher Nolan's ever made, but I don't think that makes it bad. In fact, I'd argue it's one of his best. So the movie begins with our main character, Will Dormer, who is a detective being sent to a small Alaskan town in order to investigate a murder of a young woman. When the seemingly simple case turns out to be much more, it pushes our hero to his physical breaking point, but more importantly, his psychological breaking point. So this movie is a bit of a slow burn, but it's by no means boring. The story pulls you in right away, and like Memento, it keeps you guessing the whole entire time. So this is just brownie points for the movie, but I really like the location that they shot on. It really feels like a really small secluded area, and the way they use fog as a way to build suspense was really well done. But I do think the movie's strongest suit is its actors and their performances. Al Pacino, Hilary Swank, and the since-passed Robin Williams all give great performances, making their characters all the more believable. This is a very fascinating film, and as far as characters go, it's one of Nolan's best. A lot of complaints I hear about Christopher Nolan have to do with him having too big of plots that are very complex while not giving enough time to flesh out his characters. And while I don't necessarily always agree with this, I do think that this is the film that shows that Christopher Nolan is a director who can do both great fleshed out characters while still having a very intriguing plot. This is a great film and you should not miss it. Well, those are all the films I have to talk about for now, but with the Magnificent Seven remake right around the corner, I thought I'd take the time not only to talk about that film, but also some of my favorite westerns of all time. With that being said, until next time, stay tuned, partner. And before anyone comments, I am aware that this is a sombrero.